Good evening to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our tropical weather outlook for Monday, October 6th, 2025. Today, we're going to be going over the latest on the MDR with Invest 95L, and we're going to go over as well a new area that has been highlighted in the Bay of Campeche of what seems to be a October surge in the tropical Atlantic, as I have titled for the thumbnail of this video. And of course, we're going to go over as well activity that is happening in the Eastern Pacific as well, and what that might mean for the southwestern United States too. So make sure you'll want to stay tuned for that. Let's start off in the Atlantic, first with 95L. A visible satellite images indicate that the area of low pressure located over the tropical central Atlantic is gradually becoming better organized. Environmental conditions appear generally conducive for slow development of the system, and a tropical depression is likely to form within the next couple of days while it moves quickly west northwestward across the central tropical Atlantic. This system is expected to be near or north of the northern Leeward Islands on Thursday and Friday, and of course, interests there should monitor its progress. But I will say the models have begun to trend a little bit more further to the north with 95L today, with less models taking this directly right over some of these northern Caribbean islands. But obviously, we're still talking about 5 days out when this approaches the northwestern MDR and around the areas of the northern Caribbean. But there is another area here now in the Atlantic, and this system is more than likely not going to develop, but it is one of our spin-ups here in the Bay of Campeche, and sometimes these spin-ups in the Bay of Campeche really tend to pop up on short notice, but it is interesting nonetheless that we have an area to watch here. But again, only a 10% chance of development right now in the next 48 hours and 7 days. So not really that much certainty that this really has much of a chance to do much of anything. But it's interesting nonetheless, and I'll show you why, especially when we look at sea surface temperature anomalies here throughout the Caribbean, and especially in the Gulf of Mexico. And maybe we'll still have to keep a small eye on this just in case that this doesn't, actually decide to jump scare on us. But I'll go over models in a little bit and show you what's happening here in the Atlantic. But in the Eastern Pacific, we have Tropical Storm Octave. So weakening storm now after it became a hurricane. Hurricane Priscilla, with hurricane tropical storm watches in effect for portions of the Mexican coastline, and another area here off the southwestern coast of Mexico with a 20% chance of development in the next 48 hours, but in the next 7 days, at a 70% chance. So the activity here continuing along in the Eastern Pacific, and showing you a satellite shot of things in the Eastern Pacific right now. You can definitely see the things still continuing to remain active. We have Octave here, and obviously this is now beginning to weaken and won't be really of a threat to land at all. But it's blowing up some convection, so trying to hold on. But then we have Priscilla here, pretty large, massive hurricane, and this is gonna maintain, maybe strengthen a little bit. Didn't actually check the intensity forecast, but I'm pretty sure this is going to remain a hurricane for a few days. And this will not make landfall, but I'll even show you here with the cone from the National Hurricane Center. Well, this might actually come inland here over portions of the northern Baja Peninsula. And of course, this will bring a lot of moisture into northwestern Mexico and the southwestern United States. But this is quite a huge storm that nonetheless, we have tropical storm watches in effect for portions of the Mexican coastline. And you can just see the very expansiveness of the tropical storm force wind field. And going back to the satellite, you do see that some of these outer convective bands do make their way onshore. And from that, we're likely getting some pretty gusty winds and some downpours. And Bet you that there's especially a lot of that happening here along the southern tip of the Baja California Peninsula. And it's only going to continue over the next several days as Priscilla um, moves on off to the southwest, but then eventually it will take a turn to the north, and maybe we might see some tropical storm watches and warnings be issued for portions of the central and northern Baja Peninsula issued later on, since maybe this will actually make landfall there. But this will then quickly turn post-tropical and then likely bring lots of impacts, especially in terms of heavy rainfall to the southwestern United States. And the best way to indicate that is on the 7-day Weather Prediction Center rainfall outlook. And you could see that stream of moisture coming directly from whatever energy we have here with Priscilla, advecting itself right into the southwestern United States. The heart of precipitation will be over Arizona and even over the Rocky Mountains here. And it's not going to be, crazy amounts of rain, but, at least 2 inches, maybe 3 in some places. And especially in the southwest here, that can cause flooding. But I'm pretty sure for many it is also probably much needed too. And again, also some rain too for portions of southwestern California, maybe as much as up to half an inch to maybe even an inch, depending on where you might be. And that's going to happen over the next week. And then we also have a lot of rainfall for Florida, the Bahamas, and especially here off the East Coast. And there might be a nor'easter hybrid type system that develops here off the East Coast that I'll show you with the models in a little bit. This might actually bring some pretty decent impacts to portions along the East Coast and the Northeast as we head into later this week into next week. But again, I'll show you with the models in a little bit. Here's a satellite image shot of the Atlantic, and there's also a decent amount of things happening right now. We have lots of convective activity here across the Caribbean and the Bahamas, and I said that there will be a lot of rainfall for portions of Florida and the Bahamas and across the southeast over the next several days, so that's obviously a part of that. And then you see lots of convective activity here over Central America and the Western Caribbean and the Yucatan Peninsula, and this is in general part of conditions becoming much more favorable here over Central America, as it typically does, especially as we head into this part of the hurricane season and we start getting the Central American gyres to set up here. And obviously, we have an area of interest that's kind of hinting at that pattern. But again, low 10% chance that this will develop. But regardless, this will bring a lot of heavy rainfall to Central America. And these patterns generally tend to have a lot of moisture with them. And, you don't have to have a strong hurricane to bring a lot of rainfall to places, as we've seen in the past. So if you are here throughout Central America, you'll want to keep that in mind over the next several days. And then we go out here towards the Eastern Atlantic, and we have Invest 95L, and I must say, is looking pretty decent this evening. You definitely see that it has that low-level structure going for it. There's definitely some turning going on in the lower levels of the atmosphere. Absolutely has a pretty strong mid-level circulation, and it also has some pretty decent convection right now, although probably going to need a little bit more convection before we see a fully developed low here, and enough that it'll be sufficient to be able to designate this as a fully tropical system, but it's not far off. And with the water temperatures that it has ahead of it, as I've been saying for the entire season, the MDR, very, very warm, sea surface temperature anomalies well above normal, and it extends all throughout the Caribbean too. And also, things still not bad here in the southwestern Atlantic, although, maybe not definitely near as warm as it was, especially if you remember back in July and August before we had, Erin here in the southwestern Atlantic, and then that took quite a decent chunk of energy out. But look here throughout the Caribbean and Gulf, lots of sea surface temperatures that have been virtually completely untouched for the entire season, and you definitely see that playing out very strongly. Very strong anomalies here through the Caribbean and pretty much throughout the entirety of the Gulf, especially the Central and Western Gulf, at least a degree to maybe even 2 degrees Celsius above normal. And it is over the exact areas that I've been saying we will need to watch very closely as we head throughout the next several weeks, as we start getting a Central American gyre set up, as we typically do in October. Um, and Central American gyres, especially in the month of October, tend to favor the Atlantic a lot more. Now, there probably will be Eastern Pacific activity too, but especially, because of climatologically speaking, uh, Central America and the Western Caribbean tends to be a lot more favorable for development, especially pretty decent development sometimes as well, as we head into the month of October. And you can see that play out here on the next 7 to 10 days in the European ensembles. Obviously, we have Invest 95L, and that still remains a pretty strong signal, although I guess maybe not as strong on the models, at least with the European today as yesterday, but I still think this is more than likely going to develop. And I will give you a piece of good news, especially if you are in the Northern Caribbean. Seems like these ensembles are a little bit more weighted just north of the Caribbean and turning already northward and out to sea as this gets into the northwestern MDR instead of getting too close to the Northern Caribbean islands. But this is still around 4 or 5 days out, and we know that things could change quite a bit in that time frame. So if you are in the Northern Caribbean, please keep a close eye on 95L throughout this week. But then notice, especially in the longer range, there are quite a few ensembles here that start stirring up in the Caribbean. And now some people may argue that this is not an actual solid signal. And, we could debate that. But in general, I think this is a sign of at least the atmosphere changing and pressures are lowering in the Caribbean as we start to get more favorable conditions here once again with the Central American gyre. And I think it's going to be really a time to watch, especially as we head towards mid-month. And I'll show you here on the GFS, first off with 95L though. GFS develops this by tomorrow. They already have this a fully developed tropical system, and as I showed you with the satellite, I honestly would not be surprised if by this time tomorrow we're talking about a tropical system. And then they have this strengthening, becoming a hurricane, luckily staying north of the islands, and then staying out to sea here, and then turning out into the northern Atlantic. But of course, if interests for, again, our friends of the islands, still keep a close eye. And just remember that you could still get the impacts from the outer bands here of whatever system might be coming by, even if we don't get a direct landfall. So please watch out here in the Northern Caribbean closely over the next several days. And then as this begins to turn to the north and as we get to Sunday, so right at the end of the week, notice the kind of pretty decent system here that gets going off the coastal regions of North Carolina. And this is what you saw in the Weather Prediction Center with lots of heavy rainfall being predicted here off of coastal North Carolina. And this actually lasts for quite a bit of time. It even stalls here for about a few days, this pretty potent low pressure. And not much indication that this will actually try to become a subtropical or even tropical system at all. Some people may be saying that this might be a hybrid system, but this will definitely bring quite a bit of impacts, especially throughout the East Coast and maybe even extending up into the Northeast, but especially here off of the coastal North Carolina region. And I can only imagine, because you see here that it stalls for pretty much 2 to 3 days here off the coast. Boy, is that going to bring a lot of heavy rainfall to coastal North Carolina and the Southeast. So please keep in mind of that. And then obviously you see here in the Bay of Campeche, we have some stuff stirring. We have some energy here in the Bay of Campeche. And, obviously nothing organized, although you definitely see some, little small vortmaxes here that try to consolidate a little bit, but everything kind of stays within Central America and we don't get any coherent development. But once again, the signs are there. Things are becoming more favorable. The atmosphere is changing. And then I really quickly want to run you through the European. They show 95L here, although weaker. Still not quite sure why, although I'm starting to lean towards the GFS being the model that we need to pay attention to with 95L. But again, they also show here quite a potent system off of coastal North Carolina. And we'll see what happens. We'll see if this actually tries to transition and maybe gain some subtropical characteristics as we see, especially this time of year, as we head into October and the mid latitudes start filling up a lot more with activity. We still have a Bermuda high, but again, as we're progressing into October and November, the Bermuda high starts becoming a little less powerful. And we're starting to transition back into that fall and winter like pattern. So we'll see. We'll see what happens here for coastal North Carolina. But they'll definitely have to watch over the next week for potentially a lot of rainfall and definitely, I'd imagine, some pretty harsh and nuisance conditions. And of course, we'll be keeping a close eye on 95L here in the Atlantic and obviously as well in the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico as things might become more favorable there over the next week to 2 weeks as we head further into the month of October. So we're seeing a surge in tropical activity, as I have here once again on the thumbnail card. And this is probably going to continue at least till the end of the month. And maybe we'll then finally start to see things cool down for good. And then potentially finally see the season wrap up for once and for all sometime next month. But we still have at least a month of solid activity to go, and definitely quite a bit of solid activity to watch here upcoming throughout this entire week. So definitely make sure to stay tuned. But I'm going to end it off for this evening's video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found the information that I gave to you informative, and I would appreciate that as a sign of you finding things fascinating and just lovely. I would really appreciate if you subscribe to my channel, like this video, and even share with others if you think other people will find this kind of information fascinating or informative. But until then, enjoy the rest of your evening and enjoy the rest of your week. Obviously, I'll be continuing to post throughout the week with videos every single day. So please make sure to stay tuned for that, as well as especially a video more than likely coming tomorrow. So I hope to see you then. Until then, enjoy the rest of your night.